Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Facebook Live today. And we're going to give our listeners just a few minutes to join us because it is 5 o'clock on the dot and people are probably ending their work week and very relieved maybe not to be on a Zoom right now. Christina, do you want to say hello? And then we'll do formal introductions in a minute.
Yes. Hello to everyone. Happy Friday. Made it another week.
Yes, we did.
Crazy year we have had.
Yes. And the month of July was the longest, but I think August is going to give it a run for its money.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
So let's see. It's like 5:02. I think we can just get started and people will catch up later.
Okay.
So welcome, everybody. My name is Mónica Palacio, candidate for the DC at-large seat this November. And I have the wonderful pleasure of being live with you today with Christina Henderson. Christina, please say hello.
Hello. My name is Christina Henderson. I'm also a candidate for DC Council at-large as well.
And people might be wondering, so there are two women running against each other and they're coming on a Facebook Live together. Well, we have something special planned tonight. We want to bring up both the positives and the challenges of being a woman in DC politics. And I want to thank everyone for joining us and for supporting both of us as two of your leading candidates in this race. And I think we want to start with the positive, though. And the exciting news this week of Kamala Harris. I mean, what do you think, Christina? Was this a surprise to you? And is it good news?
It's so funny because, my colleagues and I have been like, who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? I thought it was going to be Biden-Harris before they even debated for the first time. But the last couple of weeks, I got really nervous, especially with the sort of negative press that Harris was getting and Susan Rice and all of these other great Black women candidates who were in the running for the VP slot. But I have to admit, when I got the news that it was her, it came up as a news flash on my phone and I was on a conference call. And I was like mid-sentence. It was like, I had to like pull it together and, be very professional in the call and then run through my house screaming because it's such an exciting time for women, such an exciting time for the party and, for the Biden ticket.
Absolutely. I felt the same way because it's sort of like it isn't until it's official that you can feel all the joy and good energy because we were just waiting and waiting and waiting. And I know for me, she is the perfect example of somebody who's so qualified, amazing, has lived the immigrant experience. Her mother's Indian, her father's Jamaican. She represents like this diaspora of culture and the whole world sort of represented in who she is and who she's living the American dream. I was super excited. And again, I think she's an example of how a woman, no matter how qualified, still gets attacked. I mean, we're still going to find flaws. She's not perfect, obviously. I don't think
but what male candidate is perfect, right? We have had flawed male candidates forever.
Forever. Yes. But it seems like the women are skewered, they're like attacked ruthlessly. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and it's nitpicky things, right? Oh, we're going to look at her qualifications. She doesn't smile enough. She doesn't seem warm and fuzzy. Or even, when you think back to like during the primary when they were talking about Elizabeth Warren and they would say, oh, she reminds me of my mother. Like she doesn't feel like a person that I want to have a beer with. And I just kind of feel like, the type of pressure that we look for perfection in women. And we are okay with flawed male candidates. In fact, it's praised, right? Because you have overcome something or you have, struggled and had a challenge. And then, there are a lot more redemption stories, I would say, just sort of, in politics around male candidates.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was hard and it's caught me off guard this month. I think it was that we celebrated the 100-year anniversary of women even being able to vote.
Yeah, next week, which is like wild. But, even more than that, where I also find like an excitement about the Harris nomination is that, we're also celebrating this month 55 years of the Voting Rights Act. And that was the first time that, Black women affirmatively had the power and ability to exercise their right to vote. So 55 years, that's it.
That's all it is. And then people wonder why women haven't been more active or don't have sort of the capital to run. I mean, women couldn't even have a credit card back in the 50s, right? Or a bank account in their name. I mean, we don't really look at the institutionalized ways that women have been held back. And that could be a whole different other conversation, but I think it feeds perfectly into why you and I decided to do this together. Yeah. I was very upset last week when there was an article in a newspaper that highlighted your candidacy, my candidacy, and yet had a picture of 3 male candidates and didn't even include you.
Yeah.
I mean, that was outrageous to me.
Yeah, it's funny because I saw the online version first, which I thought was like, okay, this is a great article. It's fine. No big deal. And it wasn't until the next morning where a friend of mine was like, hey, have you seen the print? And I was like, no, is the story substantially different from what was online? And she was like, no, girl, they didn't print your picture. I was like, oh, they print pictures? Like, wait, what happened? Mm-hmm. And I, run to find a copy, and I literally just stood in my tracks. And I think sort of how women operate as well. For a moment there, I was like, okay, Christina, you're in your feelings, right? There are various reasons as to why this could be. They maybe don't have a file photo. All of these folks have run before, all of these different things. But I'm like, but it's also 2020. Digital photos are readily available. And I felt it was sort of a responsibility to kind of highlight what had happened. And the feedback and response from women across the city, I think has been good. And I feel like it has put our media on notice in terms of how we are representing women, not just on the local, not just on the national level, but also in local elections as well, all across politics, across the country.
Absolutely. And I think it's so great that we could join forces to talk about this, because that's been my experience with some of the local newspapers as well. Of course, we're not going to name names because we don't want to antagonize them or dragon, as they say. But they know who they are. And there have been a couple of articles run about my candidacy, where, I'm sort of mentioned like in the second to last sentence. Meanwhile, I announced my candidacy back in February, but also where the genderization of Spanish works against me, because when you say Latinos, which is a male word, it can include all the females. And normally it would, but I see these articles where they say, here are the Latinos who are running, but they only profile the men. And I find that to be outrageous. Don't use an all-inclusive term and then leave out the women and leave me out. That's just disrespectful, I think, to the hard work that you and I are doing. To stay in this race and be visible and be heard as women of color. I mean, what do you think? Do you think men have it easier getting coverage?
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I do understand and recognize that over the last few years, right, local press has been gutted. And you have far less reporters and sort of trying to do the work. But I do feel like it's a different type of ability in terms of relationship building, right? These are the guys that you've grabbed a beer with, you've had cordial conversation, you've gotten together socially, and now they're running for office. And now, it kind of just sort of feeds into each other. Whereas for first-time candidates or for women candidates, you have to do the approach a little bit differently, in my opinion. And so I wouldn't, I do think the coverage is different, but it's mainly, I think, around like the norms in terms of how we report locally and cover campaigns, frankly, across the district.
Well, you're very kind, Christina. I think if a man sneezes in a certain direction, he gets press coverage, right? And I think that we might do the impossible, as mothers, workers, teachers, essential workers, and women are still kind of invisible in the world. As a woman candidate, I think that transfers to us as well. So I'm not going to be as nice about it.
I mean, I honestly think, though, if there were more coverage to the women candidates in the race, I feel like the narrative would be a little bit different in terms of the issues that voters are talking about and the issues that voters are caring about, right? We talk about, when I'm doing meet and greets and I'm talking with voters, they're concerned about education, they're concerned about childcare, they're concerned about public transportation and safety in the neighborhoods. They're also concerned about the economy and housing and those different pieces, and wanting to see DC government work well, for all of them. No one wants to have to call 311 5 times in order to get something clean out of their alley, or, all of these little pieces. And I feel like sometimes those issues don't come to the forefront in the conversation because of who is framing what is important.
Yes, this is true. This is true. And I agree. All those issues are primary. And I think that as women, we bring a particular lens to issues that needs to be covered as well, because we have the experience many times of holding a household together, right? These multi-generational families. And so many Latinos and African Americans are the frontline workers who are most at risk now. Yeah. So I feel like I'm often the only one in the conversation that raises my hand, on the Zoom. It's like, what about the immigrant workers or the undocumented workers or the workers that were hourly workers and now they've lost their job, their pay, and they have no health coverage, nothing.
Right.
I think we as women amplify those issues a lot more and in more powerful ways, which is why I think we need more press coverage. I think the press should be looking for us and talking to us. But I also want to ask you, how, do you find that you're criticized for looking a certain way or wearing something or wearing your hair a certain way? I feel like I get that all the time.
Oh, yes. I put an inordinate amount of time into okay, what am I wearing today? Is it the right color? Am I giving too much? Am I doing too much in terms of my jewelry? What does my hair look like? I wear my hair naturally. And some days you have a good hair day. Some days you have a bad one. And the day that you have a bad one is the day that everyone's like, I don't know. She doesn't have her pulled together.
We get so judged, right? It's like, oh, is she wearing the right kind of outfit? Does she look serious? Well, you look like a lawyer. I'm like, but I am a lawyer. Right? Would you like me?
Isn't that what you want me to look like?
I worked really hard to get to be who I am and to be able to do the things I can do. But now I look too serious, or I look too threatening, or I shouldn't cross my arms because it's not welcoming, and I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding me. These are the things people are focused on. I don't think they should be focused on the things. I guess that's part of it.
Yeah. And so, I have a young daughter who's a toddler who's sort of, around and watching in this experience. And I often think in terms of how do I want her to grow and be in society. And I want her to show up as she is, right? And to feel free and empowered to, if you want to wear a skirt, wear a skirt. If you want to wear pants, wear pants. If you want to wear makeup, do that. If you don't want to do that, and that's fine too. But for people to judge you and for people to value what you bring to the table, not how you are appearing in that moment.
Oh, exactly. And I remember being a young law student, and there were still judges that wouldn't allow a woman into a courtroom if she wasn't wearing a skirt.
Oh, you would be surprised, and maybe actually you wouldn't be surprised that there are actually some Senate offices that still require women to wear pantyhose when they wear dresses and skirts.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. That just seems barbaric in the year 2020. I just
in this heat in the District of Columbia.
Right. Seriously, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It is crazy. Well, I appreciate this chance to talk to you. I'll say that as a Latina, it's tough because people who don't know, maybe haven't had a lot of contact with the Latino community or people from Latin America, they look at me and they're like, but you look like you're from the United States. You look like a gringa. I would have never guessed. I thought you were Italian. And I've done a lot of work around identity and culture and race. And so I don't get offended by those questions, but it's another way that people take your appearance as a woman and make a thousand snap judgments about you.
Right.
And it's tough. It's tough because I don't want to be disconnected from where I came from or my family, my ancestors, my culture.
Right.
It's challenging, you know. So I'm hoping my campaign will be a platform for just sharing that, you know, people who are Latino or Latin American heritage or Hispanic, however they identify, come from all colors in the spectrum, all colors, and lots of indigenous influence and Middle Eastern influence and Spanish. I mean, really from everywhere, and certainly from the African continent. But how about you? Do you face some of those weird questions sometimes?
It's usually not necessarily around appearance. I often get asked, where are you from? And, you know, I'm like trying to sort of decipher, what are they talking about? Is it, are you asking if I'm from DC? Are you asking if I'm from, you know, a different part of the country? Are you asking, you know, usually they're like, oh, but you don't have an accent. I'm like, am I supposed to? I don't know.
Yeah, I would ask that question too. Like, but your English is so good. I'm like, well, yeah, I speak 2 languages.
You know, sometimes I get, you're so articulate, which I don't think people realize is like, it's a dig, right? Especially if you are saying this to any person of color, really, in terms of like our history and things like that. And it may come off as a compliment, but sometimes it just isn't received in that same manner. So yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, I think we need to find more ways to include people and not exclude them, you know, especially now when I think people are more isolated than ever. And part of, you know, my experience after 30 years in DC is understanding that we all want the same things, but we haven't had the same access to those things.
Right.
And as we face like economic, you know, challenges, big challenges, right? I don't want our communities to be pitted against each other.
Right.
Which is why I really appreciated, you know, reaching out to you and saying, you know, I want us to model solidarity as women and as, you know, women from, you know, African American, Latino experiences, how we can still be united and fight for something.
Yeah, no, that's why I was like, yeah, this is great. I've always had these conversations with my friends in the past around, you know, black and brown people in terms of we have more in common than we have opposite. But for so long, we have been pitted against one another in terms of access to whether it be capital, experience, opportunity, all of these different pieces. And I think part of it is the recognition that if you did have Black and brown people join together in solidarity, we would be so powerful in terms of our ability to shift policies, to shift narratives, to shift leadership, you know, in the direction towards truly helping our communities out. And I'm gonna give a shout out to my friend, Mary Moran, who's doing this work in New Orleans. And she has this like organization that's working. They have this event called the Black and Brown Get Down, which the entire thing was literally around how do we bring together Black and Latino community members and leaders, you know, in the city of New Orleans to do good work on behalf of our futures. And I want to see something like that happen in DC as well, because I feel like there's so much available in terms of synergies if we could just get out of our own ways, but also get out of the silos and boxes that others have put us in.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think the moment is ripe for that because I always see, you know, the African American experience as opening the door for the rest of us. And I see the parallels in the civil rights movement of this country and the fight that, you know, immigrants have had, and not even immigrants, because when you think about Mexicans and Mexican Americans, I mean, they never came here. The border was moved. And they were therefore excluded after 1848.
Right.
But the fight to be you know, to be treated as fully human and to be included into all the areas of society that any fully human person would want to be included in, right? Whether it's civic life, whether it's government services, whether it's access to education, you know, that struggle has been, I guess, on a parallel track, I think, for both of our communities. And that should bring us together more than it should tear us apart.
Right. And I mean, I think that, you know, not just in terms of that, but also to take it back to sort of the gender piece of it, right? I think this isn't excellent opportunity this year, folks. Like, get it together. We could have a female majority on the council. It could actually be a super majority because you have the opportunity to vote for 2 people.
That's right. You can vote for us.
You can vote for both of us.
That's right. And why not? Why not?
Why not? Right. And I feel like even in just sort of this moment of us being able to do this together, I think it shows how women lead differently. Right. We're looking for collaboration. We're looking for community. We're looking to do different things. It's not based in ego. It's based in getting the work done. And so, this is super exciting. I think this might be the first time that 2 people who are running against each other were like,
history.
We're going to get together and we're going to do an event together and it's going to be cool.
That's right. Yes. No, I think we're a good model. And like you said, women can be pioneers in how politics happens, because a lot of folks try to fit you into the little box of how to be as a woman candidate or how to act or, what are the issues you should care about or not care about. I think we can break out of that mold. And I think that in doing this together, we're breaking the mold. And people do have 2 votes this November. So your 2 votes can be right here.
Right here.
So any parting words, Christina, to say goodbye?
No, I mean, yes. My parting words, I would say for folks, who are out there looking at this race that are pretty crazy, like do your research, right? Because I feel, what we talked about at the top, and even what I talk about a lot in terms of the education space, right? Reputation sometimes can be very hard to overcome. And I feel like sometimes narratives can be as well. And if we're thinking about who is framing the narrative of this race, whether it's a horse race or what are the issues that people care about, or what are the possibilities and chances of anyone in this race, I feel like as a voter, if you are doing your own research and you connect and identify with a candidate, whether it be Monica, myself, both of us, it doesn't matter, or someone else who is on the ticket, vote for that. Don't fall in line with just what everyone else is doing. Do your research because local politics matter so much. And I feel like we are at a critical moment in DC where we really need leaders who are focused in on equity for all DC residents. And I think you would get that with both of us.
I agree exactly. And I'm getting a question from the listening audience.
Oh,
so before we wrap up, I'm sorry, but we got like a burning question. So what is it like being a mom? What are the challenges of being a mom and running a campaign at the same time? Because not every candidate here is parenting, and there's certainly not mothers to toddlers or a mother to an 11-year-old and a 15-year-old as I am. So tell us, Christina.
Yeah. So thank you for that question, whoever sent it in. So I have a 17-month-old toddler. Her name is Jordan. And, when we decided to do this as a family, I think we had a different expectation of what 2020 was going to look like. One being that we would have childcare. We don't have childcare, right? So we are working from home. The childcare center is home. And if you've ever been around a toddler, you can leave them alone for maybe 2 to 3 minutes before they're getting into something that they're not supposed to be in. So a lot of it is around juggling schedules, trying to be, available for dinner, or at least enough time to be able to put her to bed each and every night, if I can. And if I can't, just wanting to sort of have that part. But I feel like, there are these challenges around, you can't do 10 conference calls back to back. I don't have that luxury, right? You might hear a kid crying. And so I think it's just a balancing act, but also having in mind, when my kid looks this up on the internet or whatever other future technological device that they're using to keep up with history, I want her to say, Mom did it with integrity. She was herself. She represented the issues, and she made me proud because she put herself out there to run for office. What about for you?
Absolutely. That's a powerful way to put it. Definitely for me, I asked myself at the beginning of COVID, can I homeschool my 5th grader and run a full-time campaign? And the answer had to be yes. And thankfully for, my family and all the support systems and the grandmothers, we've been able to rotate in help. So it's definitely tough, but what kept me going is, he might see me get up in the morning feeling a little bit tired or dragging, and he'd say, "Hey, mommy, how's the campaign? You're going to win, right?" And just the question, his hopefulness, his joy, his pride, like he feels proud.
Yeah.
So I can shake off any doubts. I can shake off, all the stress and the worries, and just say, absolutely, we are running this campaign. We're going to do this. But when you're a mom, you're divided. Your heart is always divided because you want to give your kids 1,000%. And you also want to give the challenge in front of you 1,000%. So it's tough.
A friend of mine recently did a podcast episode where she was talking about how we misuse the words guilt and grace. And in particular, sort of this idea of mom guilt. And basically was saying, to be guilty of something, you have intentionally committed an act, right? And sometimes in momming, we say, oh, mom guilt, but you didn't intentionally do something wrong, right? You are trying to live and do your best in that day, that best for your family, the best for our city, the best for our community. And so that actually helped me out this week because I was like, how are we doing all of these pieces? And I'm just like, there's a reason here further down the line, but
it's challenging. It's tough. I admire you for hanging in there. And I know that it's, it takes courage. It takes, 18 hours a day of grit and hard work. But I'm so excited that we've been able to connect and to do this together. And they're putting up, my team put up your website because my team.
Thanks,
guys. So you can visit Christina's amazing website for more information about her campaign. You can visit our website at monicafordc.com. I see they flashed right to it for information about my campaign. But again, we want to break the mold, and we're coming together to share our voices and say, give women fair coverage in the press. All of you folks in the media, pay attention to us because we're pioneers and we're doing this and we're not turning back. And it's just an exciting time to face these challenges together. So I want to thank you, Christina, again, for being gracious and agreeing to do this with me. And I hope that we can join forces again to tackle other topics.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks so much for having me. And, thank you to everyone who watched and gave us a little bit of your time today. I hope you guys have a great weekend.
Please like and share. Have a safe weekend and take good care of yourself. Bye-bye.